I'm going to give you an acronym, MAPS. Now, this is not something I came up with. I actually got it from my son, Steve. And I called him the other day and said, "Where'd you get it from?" He didn't know. So apparently this acronym is flying around at different places. But I love it. And there are many evidences for the Bible being the Word of God. But these 4 types of evidence that is in the acronym MAPS makes a lot of sense to me. First of all, manuscripts. Then from manuscripts to archaeology. From archaeology to prophecy. And from prophecy to statistics. Now, if you were to take these 4 types of evidence and apply them to any other holy book, I guarantee that those books will not hold up. But the Word of God will. So let's start with manuscripts. When we think of manuscripts, we think in 2 terms. First of all, the quantity of manuscripts. If you're going to get close to the original copy, to understand if you really have accuracy, you want to have a lot of manuscripts. And so we start with the Old Testament. Now, the Old Testament does not have as many manuscripts as the New Testament, and a number of reasons. First of all, when you think of Jerusalem, you think in terms of a city that's been destroyed and rebuilt, destroyed and rebuilt, destroyed and rebuilt 27 times. And so there's a lot of destruction, so not a whole lot of manuscripts found there. Not only that, but also when these manuscripts were first written, and I'm talking about the original writings, we call the original autographs. When they were first written, they were written on papyrus and on parchment, which is animal skin. And of course, over the years, that can get brittle, and it can also fade. And so that was another reason. There is a third reason, and that is when it comes to the 500 to the 900 AD, there's a group of men called the Manuscripts, and they were scribes. And what they did was to put vowel points in the consonants, in the words, and they also divided the words. And you say, well, why is that so important? Well, let's look at it this way. See if we can get this guy to work. There we go. Look up here. Someone want to read that for me? Now, don't say that's Greek to me because it's Hebrew. All right? How many words do you see up there? You see 1. Okay? The problem before these Manuscripts came to town is you not only had 1 line like that, but you had a whole sheet. You had an entire scroll of nothing but consonants, Hebrew letters. And so you had to really know Hebrew to be able to divide those letters to know exactly what that word was saying. So when the Manuscripts came to town, what they did was first they divided the words. And here we can see there are, how many words did you say? 1. Anyone see more than 1 word? 12. Okay. There are 3 words here. Here's 1 word. Here's 1 word. And there's the other word. All right, let's move this guy over. All right, there are 3 words. Now, you look at that, and it makes a lot more sense if you know Hebrew. But if you don't know Hebrew and you want to pronounce it, the question is, how would you pronounce it? That's like having a W-Z-K-T-S. And you try to figure out, how do you pronounce that? Because you need vowels in between those consonants. So as the Manuscripts looked at that, they came up with a number of vowels. And they said, over here, we will put a vowel in like that. Actually, it's 2 little dots. And then over here, they put 2 dots in, but they were beside each other. And then under here, they put another dot. And then they decided to put some other vowels over here. There's a T, and there's a T. All right? Sort of a T. Over here, they said, well, let's put some dots, but we'll put it like that. And then we'll put a dot up here. Now let's put another dot down there. Well, when you look at this, that is a, I, a, o, I. Bereshith, bara, Elohim. This is Genesis 1:1. In beginning, created God. You start over there and you read this way. So once they separated the words and then they put the vowels in, it made it much easier to read a scroll. So what do you do with the scrolls that have all the consonants? You bury them. That's why we don't have that many manuscripts of the Old Testament. But we do have manuscripts from the Old Testament. We also have versions and we have translations, which really helps us compare one with the other. Now, when we get to the New Testament, it's a lot different. Because in the New Testament, man, many more manuscripts. In fact, when you compare the manuscripts in the New Testament with all of the other manuscripts of other ancient writings, there's a tremendous comparison. For instance, we have the New Testament, more manuscripts than 10 other ancient manuscripts put together. What am I talking about? Well, in the New Testament, we have like 5,700 manuscripts. 5,700. And then, on top of that, you have 25,000 portions of the New Testament. We have a lot to compare with one another to make certain we are getting a very pure text. We also are focusing on the quality. How do we know we have real good manuscripts? Well, when it comes to the Old Testament, the oldest complete Bible of the Old Testament is the Leningrad Codex. But that was written in around 1008 AD. Now that's pretty far away from when the original was written. Compare the original manuscripts with copies. You have a copy 1,000 years out, and you think, well, there could be a lot of mistakes in there, right? We need something closer to this original. All right? We have copies perhaps even 100 years from the original, or maybe even closer than that. So as you look at this, you say, well, then what we have to do is to compare these two. For the closer a copy is to the original, all things being equal, the more pure it would be. So you'd rather have something real close, and then when you have something real close to the original, you compare it with something that's far away to see how many contradictions or problems there are between the two texts. Malachi 432 BC. All right, what copies do we have? Well, if we look at the Leningrad over here, that's 1008 AD. So what is that? 1,500 years, 1,500 years apart. Is there not something that's closer to the original copy of Malachi? Well, along comes the Dead Sea Scrolls, 1948. We have a Bedouin young man who is out with his sheep, and or maybe his goats, and he lost some, and he's trying to find them, and he picks up a stone down there in the area of the Dead Sea known as Qumran. He starts throwing stones, and he threw a stone into a cave, and he heard a clink. I thought, oh, that's interesting. You shouldn't get a clink, you should get a... But instead we have a clink. And so he crawls up and goes into this cave. And when he gets into the cave, he sees these big jars. He opens the lid of the jar, and he looks in, and he sees all these manuscripts. Well, he doesn't know that they're manuscripts. He just sees they're scrolls. So he takes them out, and he decides he's going to sell some of these things. And when he finds that people really want them, then he and some others begin tearing them to pieces and say, you can have a piece, you can have a piece, you can have a piece. And that's what happened to a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were actually shredded with pieces being sold. But there were some complete books that were found in there. And here we have the Dead Sea Scrolls that go back to like 250 BC. So the question is, if we were to compare the Isaiah scroll back in this 250 BC with the Leningrad scroll, what do you think we'd end up with? How close do you think they would be? What kind of percentage would you guess? 10%? 20%? 35%? I mean, there's a big difference between 10 AD and 250 BC. No guessing? When these two were compared, 95% identical. And where the variations were, they had no issue of faith or anything like that. There are differences in spelling, there are differences in some words missing or some words inserted, but 95%. Okay, I want to show you the Isaiah scroll because there's something here that I want you to see. Now, I know that you're not going to go online and start looking through all the Isaiah scrolls and try to guess what all this stuff means. But you see a 1 up there? That means that the Isaiah scroll was found in cave 1. There are 11 caves down there in Qumran. And the Isaiah scroll was found in cave 1. Q is Qumran. Isaiah is IS. And the A means this is the first Isaiah scroll found there at Qumran. There's also a 1Q Isaiah B, because there was a second scroll found there at Qumran on the book of Isaiah. Here is Qumran. The caves you see down here, this is cave 4. And so there are a lot of scrolls found in cave 4. Isaiah scroll was found, though, in cave 1. Geisler and Nix write this. Just think of Isaiah 53. Of the 166 words in Isaiah 53, there are only 17 letters in question. And then they go on to talk more about that, and here's their conclusion. Thus, in one chapter of 166 words, there is only one word of 3 letters in question after 1,000 years of transmission. And this word does not significantly change the meaning of the passage. Remember, you have the Leningrad, 10 AD. You go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, back to like 250 BC. You're getting closer to when Isaiah was written. And then you find there's one word of 3 letters. Tremendous accuracy, tremendous quality when it comes to the Old Testament. Now, consider how carefully these scribes copied. And I really love this because here's the old scribe sitting there, and he has his quill, and he's starting to go from copy from one manuscript to another. Now, when he copied, no individual letter could be written down without having looked back at the passage he was copying. Now, if he was just copying the book of Malachi, the heading would be Malachi. So he goes M, A, L. All that time to do one word. Then he has to start at the beginning of Malachi. Imagine what it was like doing Isaiah. I mean, Malachi is small compared to the book of Isaiah. But they wanted to make sure that it was letter for letter. Furthermore, when it came to writing the name of God, they would not take a newly dipped pen for fear when they would bring it out that the name of God would be blotched. And as they are writing the name of God, even if the king walked in, they could not stop and look up or stand up or anything else. They had to focus on what they were doing. Not only that, but they knew each paragraph, each word, each letter, so that they could always trace back as to how many paragraphs, how many words, how many letters on this page. And they also knew the middle letter of the book, so they knew they were copying accurately. So that's how careful the scribes were when they were copying the Old Testament. Now, when it comes to the New Testament, wow. Many manuscripts of antiquity are separated by many, many years from the original text to the copy that we have today. From the original to the earliest copies, there are 114 fragments that are within 50 years. of the original writing. And there are 200 books that are only 100 years out, and then 325 complete New Testament copies that are only 225 years from the original text. When you think of these other ancient writings, look at Homer's Iliad, somewhere around 720 BC. What was the earliest copy? 400 years out. All right, let's go on to another one. Plato, 427 to 347, the earliest copy, 900 years out. Let's go on to Caesar's Gallic Wars. You have the original copy, 58 to 51 BC, the earliest copy, 1,000 years out. And yet no one is denying that there was a Homer who wrote the Iliad, or Plato, that he existed, or Caesar. We all say, yeah, well, this is Caesar's writings. And then when it comes to the New Testament, everyone goes up in the arms and say, well, how can you trust the New Testament? Well, let's look at the New Testament. Somewhere between 40 and 95 AD, the book of James is probably the earliest New Testament writing. 40, 42, somewhere around there. The book of Revelation would be the last book, around 95 to 100 AD. How far out? Well, let's look. The earliest copy, 50 to 225 years out. In fact, what you find when it comes to taking these early manuscripts of the New Testament with later manuscripts to the New Testament, it's not 95% accuracy between them, but 99% between them, because we have more manuscripts to look at. Sir Frederick Kenyon, director and principal librarian of the British Museum, writes, in no other case is the interval of time between the composition of the book and the date of the earliest extant manuscript so short as that of the New Testament. The church fathers, Tertullian and all those other guys, they quoted many, many times from the Bible, from what they saw as the Bible, especially the New Testament. There are 86,000 quotes from the church fathers. And when you take all those quotes and all of their sermons where they used the New Testament, you put all that together and you could put the New Testament together with only 11 verses missing. And so I can say we can pretty well trust the New Testament as well as the Old Testament. In real terms, the New Testament is easily the best attested ancient writing in terms of the sheer number of documents, the time span between the events in the document, and the variety of documents that are available to sustain or contradict it. There is nothing in ancient manuscript evidence to match such textual availability and integrity. Ravi Zacharias.